You ever get that feeling that the world economy just doesn't make sense anymore? Well, you're definitely not alone. And what if I told you the system we all call capitalism, well, it's already dead? Today, we're diving into a pretty wild argument that answers the question that was put to the economist Yanis Varoufakis decades ago.
So this all started with a question from his father. Years and years ago, Varoufakis' dad, a lifelong leftist, was wondering, how is this all going to end? How is capitalism finally going to die? He was hoping it wouldn't be with some big bang, but a quiet, gradual shift to something better. He never got to hear the answer, but that question, it really stuck around.
And now we have that belated answer. Varoufakis' big argument is this. Capitalism didn't just evolve, it was killed. And you want to know what killed it? Its own creation, the internet. And what's replaced it is a whole new and frankly much more extractive system that he calls technofeudalism. So to really get how we ended up here, we've got to go back and understand the beast that was running the show before all this went down.
All right, let's rewind the clock to the late 20th century. For decades, the global economy was basically dominated by this one powerful, almost mythical beast. And understanding what it was, and more importantly, how it died in 2008, well, that's the key to unlocking everything that's happened since.
Okay, so right after World War II, things were pretty stable, right? We had the system called Bretton Woods. It was all built on America's massive industrial power and the fact that it sold way more than it bought. But then, in 1971, the US just tore it all down, on purpose. And in its place, they built something completely new, something way more unstable, but man, was it powerful. They unleashed what Varoufakis calls the global minotaur.
So what was this beast exactly? Think of it like this. The global minotaur was a system where the U.S. economy started buying way more stuff than it sold, running up these massive deficits. And this deficit acted like a giant global vacuum cleaner. It just sucked in everything. Cars from Germany, electronics from Japan, and most importantly, it sucked in all the extra cash, the capital from the rest of the world. And Wall Street's job? It was to take that flood of foreign money and recycle it, pumping it back out to fuel globalization and finance for the next 30 years.
And the sheer scale of the financial bubble this thing created, it's just mind-boggling. I mean, look at this number. By 2007, the total amount of money being bet on the global money markets had ballooned to $750 trillion. To put that in perspective, that's more than 10 times the entire world's income at the time. It was an absolutely gigantic house of cards all built on debt.
And then, of course, in 2008, that entire house of cards came crashing down. The Minotaur was dead. But you gotta understand, this wasn't just another financial crisis. This was the death of the entire economic model that had been running the world for a whole generation. And what happened next, the way our leaders responded, well, that's what changed everything.
So in the middle of all that chaos in 2008, you had central banks and governments just scrambling to save the system, right? But here's the crazy part. Their solution, it had this massive unintended consequence. In the process of trying to save capitalism, they actually ended up killing it and financing its replacement.
So here's what they did, and this is the crucial part. The response was what Varoufakis famously calls socialism for financiers. Central banks basically just printed trillions of dollars out of thin air. And where did that money go? Straight to the very same banks that had caused the crash in the first place. This gave birth to what he calls a bankoptocracy, a bizarre new system where the main job of the government became to guarantee the losses of a failed financial sector. It essentially fused the power of the state with the interests of bankrupt private banks.
But, and this is a huge but, here's the fatal flaw in the plan. The whole idea was that this fire hose of cash was supposed to trickle down into the real economy. Fund new factories, create jobs. It absolutely never happened. Why? Well, big corporations looked out at a world full of people with low wages and not a lot of spending power, and they basically asked, why on earth would we build new factories for people who can't afford to buy anything? So instead, they took all that free money and just bought back their own stock, jacking up the share price and boosting executive bonuses, while the rest of the economy just flatlined.
So all that central bank money, all those trillions, it had to go somewhere, right? And it flowed into this brand new revolutionary type of capital, one that was built on the internet. He calls it cloud capital. And you have to understand this is a fundamental shift. Think about it. Traditional capital, factories, machines, that kind of stuff, that's a means of production. But cloud capital, the algorithms behind Google, Amazon, Facebook, that's a produced means of behavior modification. Its goal isn't just to make stuff anymore. Its goal is to change what you do, what you think, and even what you want.
And that brings us right to where we are today. See, the rise of cloud capital wasn't just some new phase of capitalism. Nope. It gave birth to an entirely new system. Welcome to technofeudalism. This chart just lays out this shift perfectly. In the old world, in capitalism, the main driver was profit, right? You'd get profit by competing in markets. But under technofeudalism, the main driver is rent. And this isn't rent for an apartment. It's rent that's extracted from these huge, privately owned digital platforms, what Varoufakis calls cloud fiefs. And the primary goal? It's not just making stuff to sell anymore. It's modifying our behavior.
Just think about it. Think about the Amazon Marketplace or the App Store on your iPhone. They might look like open, competitive markets, but they're not at all. They're basically digital fiefdoms. You have one lord, one single company that owns the entire space, makes all the rules, and dictates the terms for anyone and everyone who wants to operate there.
And if you want to exist in their digital kingdom, you have to pay tribute. That is cloud rent. It's not profit that's earned by being better than a competitor. It's just a fee for being allowed to exist on their platform. The perfect example is Apple taking a 30% cut of every single sale on its App Store. That's not profit. That is the modern digital equivalent of a feudal lord demanding rent from a peasant just for the privilege of working the land.
And this has created a whole new class structure. At the very top, you've got the cloudalists. These are the new digital lords, the Bezoses and Zuckerbergs. Below them are the vassal capitalists. These are the traditional businesses who now completely depend on these cloud fiefs just to survive and reach their customers. And at the bottom, well, that's us. We are the cloud serfs. And think about it. Every single time you post a review, share a photo, or even just click a like button, you are performing free, unwaged labor that directly builds the value of their cloud capital.
And honestly, that is the most revolutionary and kind of scary part of this whole thing. For the first time in history, the most valuable capital on the planet is being built not by paid employees in a factory, but by all of us, working for free every single day.
Okay, so this diagram basically shows how the old capitalist engine used to work. It was pretty straightforward. Labor and capital came together to create value, and then that value was split between wages for the workers and profits for the capitalists. But now, look at what's happening in the new system. The clopodalists have jammed themselves right in at the very top of that flow. So now, before a single dollar can become profit, or before a single dollar can be paid in wages, they extract their cloud rent. They're literally taking their cut right off the top, basically starving the old capitalist system of the fuel it needs to even run.
I know, this all paints a pretty bleak picture, doesn't it? It kind of begs the obvious question. Is there any way out of this new digital serfdom? Is a rebellion even possible? Well, before we can even talk about that, we have to really get a handle on the personal cost. I mean, remember when there was a line between your work life and your personal life? That fence, that separation? It's been completely demolished. Cloud capital demands our constant, undivided attention. We are always producing data for it, we are always on, and in a sense, we are always for sale.
And the result of all this is what he calls the death of the liberal individual. Our identities have been shattered into millions of little data points. Our preferences are logged, analyzed, and manipulated. We're not really self-possessed individuals anymore. We are individuals who are, in a very real sense, possessed by the algorithms that, let's be honest, probably know us better than we know ourselves.
But what if that's not the end of the story? What if the very tool of our imprisonment, the cloud itself, could also be the key to our liberation? What if the network that traps us also holds the seeds of a new kind of freedom?
This is where Varoufakis imagines something he calls a cloud rebellion. And the genius of it is that it uses the system's own logic against itself. The very same networks that are used to monitor us can be used to organize us. I mean, just imagine it. A single coordinated day where all of Amazon's warehouse workers walk out. And at the same time, millions of us, the cloud serfs, just agree not to log in. The personal inconvenience for any one of us is tiny, right? But the disruption to that flow of cloud rent, it would be massive. A real shot across the bow of the new ruling class.
So, when you boil it all down, this is the fundamental choice we're facing. The technology itself isn't the enemy here. The cloud can either be what it is now, a collection of privately owned digital fiefdoms, Or it could be a new kind of digital commons, owned by all of us and working for all of us. The really big question is, which one of those futures are we going to build? And maybe more importantly, what role will you play in deciding?